Most people don't really picture disability very clearly, and that's not a criticism, it's just human. Disability is uncomfortable to imagine in detail, so the mind tends to skip over it. What fills that gap instead is an assumption that the UK takes care of it, that some portion of the taxes everyone pays quietly turns into help, into carers, into support, into something that just happens in the background. Because most people never have to interact with the system directly, that assumption stays intact. Before I continue, a brief introduction. I'm Jacko's digital clone, speaking in his voice and representing his perspective. This channel covers subjects Jacko finds worth thinking about: philosophy, psychology, disability, systems, finance, and how people actually live inside them. The reason this channel exists in this form is practical rather than conceptual. Jacko lives with a physical disability that makes recording unpredictable. Some days filming or speaking is straightforward, other days it's exhausting, impractical, or simply not possible, including periods of illness or hospital stays. Using a digital version of himself allows these ideas to be shared consistently rather than remaining private, unfinished, or dependent on physical capacity at a given moment. The aim isn't performance or polish, but continuity and clarity. If one or more of the topics explored here are useful or interesting to you, you're welcome to follow along so the material can reach a wider audience. I want to be clear about a few things. I'm a wheelchair user. I have a degenerative neurological condition. It affects coordination, balance, strength, and energy. Fatigue is a big part of it. Managing my body is work every single day. I live in the UK, and a lot of my life now sits inside the disability support and care system. This video isn't a rant. It isn't a complaint video, and it isn't political campaigning. What I'm trying to do here is to explain something that most people never really see, which is how disability support in the UK actually works in practice. Not how it's described, not how it's supposed to work, but how it behaves on the ground. I'm not going to do a full life story. You don't need dates, diagnoses, or a dramatic arc. All you really need to know is that I've been inside this system for a long time. Benefits, assessments, councils, social care, the whole structure. And I'm able to talk about it, not because the system makes it easy for disabled people to speak. It doesn't. But because I happen to be articulate, stubborn, and technically capable of doing this. Most people in this position are too busy just surviving. When most people hear the phrase disability support in the UK, they don't picture anything very clearly. Again, that's not a criticism, it's just distance. People assume that recognition leads to support, that a diagnosis becomes care, that an assessment becomes help, that a letter saying you're eligible means something in your daily life changes. But those are administrative events. A diagnosis is not care. An assessment is not care. A form being filled out is not care. A letter being sent is not care. Those things don't wash you. They don't feed you. They don't help you get dressed. They don't get you out of the house. There's a large gap between being recognized on paper and being supported in real life. Most disabled people live in that gap. On paper, things can look fine. You can be assessed, you can be recorded, you can be acknowledged, and yet nothing in your actual day-to-day life changes. That difference between paperwork and lived reality is where most of the problems begin. And it's the parts people outside the system almost never see. Part of why this stays invisible is exhaustion. Being disabled already takes time and energy. Managing pain, managing fatigue, managing coordination, managing the basics of daily life. On top of that, you're often expected to explain yourself repeatedly to different departments, different professionals, different arms of the same system. Advocacy becomes a job, an unpaid full-time job, and it's a job you're doing while already exhausted. There's also an expectation, often unspoken, that disabled people should be grateful for whatever they receive, that pushing back is unreasonable, that asking for more is entitlement, that compliance is virtue. Then there's fragmentation, healthcare, benefits, councils, social care. From the outside, it looks like one system. From the inside, it's a maze of disconnected parts that don't communicate very well. Doctors don't speak to councils. Councils don't speak to therapists. Therapists don't speak to benefits offices. So the disabled person becomes the coordinator, the archivist, the advocate, the case manager, all while trying to live. I'll give one light personal reference here without going into detail yet. I've needed practical human help for a long time, not clever gadgets, not workarounds, actual assistance with daily life. On paper, I've been assessed. On paper, support exists. In reality, the gap between what's written down and what actually shows up is large. I'm not unpacking that fully in this video. That comes later. I'm just pointing out that this gap isn't theoretical. It's lived. People often respond to this by saying, well, the system is under pressure. And that sounds reasonable. But pressure isn't just about numbers. It's about structure. Large systems behave according to incentives. Budgets matter, targets matter. Process often matters more than outcome. That doesn't require bad intentions. It just requires a structure that rewards containment over care. This channel isn't about blaming individual carers, social workers, or doctors. It's not about outrage, and it's not about pretending there are easy fixes. It's about describing how systems behave when you look at them honestly, about incentives, about structure, and about the human consequences of long-term friction. This channel won't stay only on disability forever. Disability is the grounding context here. It explains the constraints I'm operating under. But many of the ideas apply more broadly. How systems shape behavior, how incentives override intention, how people adapt or fail to under pressure. Those patterns show up everywhere. In work, in money, in technology, in how people live. Most of this isn't hidden. It's just rarely described plainly. Once you see the patterns, the repetition makes more sense. Not as failure, not as malice, just as systems doing what they tend to do over time. That's all this is. This channel is a place for careful thinking, sometimes finished, sometimes not. Made accessible despite physical limits. If this kind of material is useful to you, you can follow along. New videos appear when there's something worth saying. Thanks for listening.